My daughter ignored her mother, my wife, when she was very ill. Now, she's angry I've distanced myself from her. My daughter is 19, still very young but old enough to know what she did wrong. 5 years ago, my wife, her biological mother, began to exhibit very strange behavior. She would say weird things, make impulsive decisions, and act strange. She and my daughter would clash often. Now my daughter always was a daddy's girl, but she was still close with her mother. I honestly thought my wife was going through a midlife crisis and dealing with the pressures of working while raising a teen, and we had a come to Jesus talk. About 6 months after the start of that behavior, my wife ended up in a really bad accident. When they were performing emergency surgery, they found a ball-sized tumor pressing her brain, which was the cause of her initial behavior. My wife ended up having to relearn everything from walking to talking. She was still reeling from the effects of the accident and the brain tumor and was mentally and physically disabled for a while. Our daughter refused to be seen in public with my wife. She hated the mess of the wheelchair and her mother's condition. She would also just ignore her mother and speak to me all the time, sometimes even about her. She saw my wife as a burden and would complain to people, to the point where the school called me. At the time I was just struggling to get by and I couldn't alienate my daughter. My wife needed a lot of care and my daughter was in a difficult stage of her life that I couldn't abandon her in. When my daughter went off to college, I was sad but also somehow relieved. My wife still needs a wheelchair sometimes and she has difficulty with some things, but she has honestly improved so much. It really solidified our love for each other and our belief in our marriage. My daughter is coming for summer break after exams. I don't know why, but I feel uncomfortable with her staying for this long. I feel like the sense of closeness I had with her evaporated when she treated her own mother callously. I don't know what to do. My wife is very excited to have our daughter come, but I don't want to see her heartbroken. I've tried getting over it and talking with my therapist, but I just can't feel emotionally close with my daughter and I'm sure she'll notice. Am I the idiot? Edit. I don't know where any of your assumptions about my wife are coming from. Her mother was never abusive in any way, including mentally or emotionally. When I said my wife did or said strange things, she had regressed in some ways to a child, which was exacerbated by the accident. For example, she would go on and on about a show she watched. She couldn't tell a story. She would spit out food if she didn't like it. My daughter would never have been put in an abusive situation. Update: Mother's Day was terrible. I don't know why I'm updating this. Maybe it's for the few people can sympathize. A lot of the prior comments made untrue, horrible accusations about my wife. My wife was never abusive or even mean, not in any state. It makes it so much harder to understand why our daughter would be so cold to her own mother. My wife's mental state before the accident had regressed into childlike behavior, which is concerning but not the cause of my daughter's coldness. My wife would spit food out back into her plate, bluntly say it tasted bad, and then wipe her nose with her sleeve like a child. I made the error of thinking she was having a midlife crisis because she bought an expensive dress because it was soft. She would forget to do things, her responsibilities. Mother and daughter clashed because she would tell stories with no beginning and end, just rambling. She would ask the same questions over and over. She would promise to pick her up or bring something and forget. Things that would annoy a teenage girl. The tumor were concentrated in the back of the head. When she got into the car accident, it made everything worse. She needed to relearn everything. She is still disabled. We had high expectations for our daughter, but she set them higher for herself. She had a dream school, where she wanted to go since she was 12. It meant that I had to chauffeur to so many activities throughout high school and sacrifice a lot to make sure she got the opportunities she wanted. It meant leaving my disabled wife in a longer-term care facility to hopefully recover. It was COVID, so there were long stretches where we didn't visit her. She was there for too long. I never should have left her there. When she came home, my wife was still largely nonverbal and wheelchair-bound. She needed help with everything from eating to going to the bathroom. I earned a little as a caregiver on top of my regular job. My daughter was so cruel and cold to her mother at that time. She wasn't a young kid or even a young teen, was never expected and never did take care of her mother, so it wasn't caregiver burnout. She would hate if her mother came outside with her and would later blame it on the wheelchair, saying it was bulky and attracted attention. She would ignore her mother and moved away to distance herself physically. I ended up getting a call from the school because a classmate had overheard what she said about her mother and reported it as ableism. I don't know what she said. All I know is that she was very cruel to her mother. I had her in individual therapy and we did therapy as father and daughter. It was her choice to do. Am I the idiot? My daughter ended up getting into her dream college. They had an accepted students weekend and she demanded that her mother stay home even though parents were invited. By that time my wife had made leaps and bounds in progress and was disappointed to stay home. I went and tried to be a proud father. At least she let her mother go to graduation. My daughter came home a few days ago. Her exams were earlier. She informed us that she earned a research position with a professor for the summer. My wife was overjoyed, writing a card all on her own about how proud she was and she wished she saw her daughter grow into an accomplished young woman. How proud she was to share this moment. My daughter looked sick with guilt. I know what that looks like. On Mother's Day, I made a comment that she couldn't ignore her mother today. She told me to stop saying that. I made another comment about how proud her mother was of her and how much she loved her. I was doing it on purpose. It ended up with her saying she regretted what she did. I always had my suspicions. I interrogated her until she tearfully admitted she hated what her mother had turned into and she hit her mother once and she was ashamed to be around her because of what people thought. We got into a shouting match and she yelled at me that I was so focused on everyone else's behavior because I regretted my own. It's true in a lot of ways. Because of COVID, there were limited visiting hours. But I still didn't visit as much as I should have. I left my wife in a facility to focus on our daughter but also so that it would be easier for me. There are no siblings, no grandparents to help. I didn't visit as much because I hated how much my wife would sob when I had to leave. I started feeling guiltier when I read a news article about a nurse being sentenced for assaulting a woman in a coma. I thought about my wife. She was nonverbal, had limited short-term memory, and wheelchair-bound. I wouldn't know what would happen. I tried to convince myself that it was fine but all I did was find more and more news articles about abuse at care facilities. I would have nightmares. I pulled my wife out. I took months of work. I finally got her home. She was taken care of but not like I would have. There were a few knots in her hair, bruising, sores. I won't lie, the care was brutal. Now I had to juggle taking care of my wife and making sure my daughter was supported and able to reach her dreams. And it was hard seeing my wife like that. She was accomplished and intelligent and now couldn't do a puzzle or eat on her own or go to the bathroom by herself. There was a huge learning curve and they assigned a nurse to come see my wife every few days. My wife is so sweet. I attend a caregiver support group and I feel guilty because my wife doesn't have the fits of temper or the rage or the depression that others did. I felt guilty for being tired. Some had it a lot harder than I did. She got better and over time it was like she was almost back to her old self. And she never lost love for either of us. It hurts that she blames herself for how our daughter treated her. Maybe I shouldn't have let my daughter focus on prestige and appearance so much. Maybe I should have realized the signs early on and exposed her to others. My daughter and I aren't speaking. My wife just wanted a happy family. I'm looking for therapy for us as a family. Now for the comments later on it'll be hope. Right now I'm just dealing with resentment and guilt and just questioning where I went wrong. Because she was 16-18 when she acted like this. Young, yes. But old enough to be considered an adult if committing a crime. I know I'll have to buckle down and be the parent in this situation but it's always in the forefront of my mind that she treated her own mother like this.